Hello and welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I'm your host, Bill Rader.
And I'm Sean Kane.
And this is our weekly podcast where we talk about a variety of different topics. We talk about history and sports history and pop culture, news, all kinds of different things.
Historical figures like JFK, RFK, MLK.
A variety, as I said, a variety of topics. And this week is no exception. We're going to talk a little Mafia this week. But before we do that, Sean, how you doing?
Good, buddy. Doing good. Just trying to stay warm, pal. It is cold outside, buddy. If you don't have to go outside, just stay indoors.
So we're recording this just before Christmas, and the temperature went from 50 degrees to
Siberia.
Yeah, to like negative 15 and within a matter of a few hours. It was really, really crazy. Pipes are freezing and all kinds of fun stuff going on. But we're here and we're still podcasting. It's not going to stop us from podcasting, Sean. Nothing's going to stop that.
No, we always get the truth out, buddy, no matter what. But I do got some feedback, Bill.
Oh, well, let's hear it.
Well, we did that episode on the troubles in Northern Ireland. So I got some feedback from the boyos over there in Ireland. And some of them were a little bit, they thought they wanted to hear more about the history, Bill, and a little less about the mob and stuff. So, but I told them, it was only the first in a series. And, I'm working the research and we're doing, trying to line up some guests. And we're going to cover everything. We're going to go back. We're going to make sure we cover every atrocity by the English. There's no doubt about it. We're going to cover every one of them, so we'll get back at that, buddy. But, I just want to let them know that it's coming.
All right, good. Yeah, we've got we have endless topics to cover. That's for sure. We have,
and I'll tell you, Bill, our listeners, I mean, they just keep giving us topics. Like I get so many texts. I know you do too. Like people just want to hear this and that, and they're giving us great ideas and stuff. So yeah, I mean, we got so many ideas in the back burner, buddy. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It'll keep us going for a long time. That's for sure.
And this one tonight is going to be pretty important, Bill, because we're going to try to end 60 years of myths and lies and things that were accepted as facts. And, after doing the research, they're really not facts. So we're going to see if we could persuade people to, not believe what you heard on the street and believe what we're telling you from the documentation.
And what is today's topic, Sean?
Today's topic is Sam Giancana, Marylin Monroe, and the Kennedys. And we're going to talk a lot about old man Kennedy. We're going to talk about the Chicago outfit, and we're going to cover a lot of things, Bill, tonight. And like I said, there's a lot of myths out there. We're gonna try to dispel them, buddy.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's get going.
All right, pal. So to start this, let's start with the outfit in Chicago. So we got to do some we talked a little bit about that on the organized crime episode we did, but there's a lot of myths about the outfit, Bill. And when you talk the outfit, you talk about Al Capone. So, start with him, the myths about him, like in the movies, they portray him like an old man sometimes. And Al Capone was never an old man. He was 24 when he took over as the boss, right? And he was the boss of the South Side gang, which I have to make this clear, Bill. He was never a member of Cosa Nostra. That's the myth that people don't understand. He was just a gangster. So he takes over from Johnny Torrio when he was 24. And then, he had a short run that was like 7-8 years as boss that was filled with violence his entire reign, with this war with Bugs Moran, who ran the North Side gang. And, he went to prison when he was like 32, 33 years old. And then he died. He went to prison and then he died from syphilis, and he was only in his 40s. So Al Capone was never an old man, Bill.
And when was this? When was his heyday? When was he? This was like in the 20s, right? This was.
Well, yeah, the 20s would have been like when Prohibition, Bill.
Yeah.
The mid 20s, that would have been like his heyday.
Right. Yep.
And the thing is,
when we say, we're talking 1920s, not
Oh, 1920s, buddy, 1920s.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when Al Capone, the guy who ran Chicago, this is what people don't understand. The guy who ran Chicago for 50, almost 60 years, Bill, was Tony Accardo. Tony Accardo is one of the smartest bosses. And the thing is, we can't even do a podcast on Tony Accardo because it'd be like 5 minutes, Bill.
There's no information on him.
No, hardly anything, Bill. Because that's the way Tony Accardo wanted it. He was so smart, and he started as Al Capone's bodyguard. And I think being around Capone, he understood that Capone's insistence on being in the spotlight and always being around the media and having the attention on him is not good for a gangster. And Accardo realized this. And what Accardo did is he set up, what happened was when Capone goes to prison, Frank Nitti takes over, the enforcer, Frank Nitti.
Right.
And the outfit, okay, there was a Cosa Nostra presence in Illinois, but it wasn't in Chicago. And the thing is, Lucky Luciano, who was the boss of all bosses in New York, he didn't want Capone into the outfit. And when the St. Valentine's Day massacre happened and Capone went after Bugs Moran, there's even a lot of people that think that Moran got a phone call from somebody connected to Luciano that tipped him. And that's why Moran wasn't in that garage.
Oh,
he got away from the hit.
Yeah.
So the thing is, once Capone dies, Nitti takes over. And what they do is the Cosa Nostra presence from Illinois kind of combines with the outfit, really the North Side gang, and even the South Side gang, both gangs. And they actually combine to become what's known as the outfit. And they all become Cosa Nostra. And the thing is that Nitti then ends up, they said he committed suicide. Who knows? If it was a suicide or they whacked him, who knows? But then Tony Accardo takes over, and Paul Rica was his right hand, and they basically take over, okay? And they do an interesting thing. They bring a lot of Irish and Jewish gangsters into the fold. Like, they set up a thing where they'd have like 3 consigliaries, Bill. So the consigliere is like the advisor, like the third in command.
Yeah.
And they would set up where they had like Murray Humphreys was an Irish Welsh gangster. We talked about him before. And also Gus Alex was a Jewish gangster of Greek descent. He was he was one of the consigliaries. And Accardo would insulate himself by doing this. And then one of the most important things Accardo did is he set up front bosses, okay, which would be a street boss. And this is where Sam Giancana comes in. Sam Giancana was never the boss of the outfit. He was the front boss or the street boss. And Bill, you could think of The Sopranos when Tony puts Uncle Junior, Tony and the other couples get together and they make Uncle Junior think he's the real boss.
Right.
Tony's the real boss.
Just to protect them. Yeah.
To protect them. But the difference in this case, Bill, is Giancana understands he's not being duped like Uncle Junior was. Giancana fully understands that he answers to Tony Accardo.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So Giancana is the street boss, and there's so many myths about Giancana, and we're gonna try to tell the truth tonight, buddy. But the thing about him is he was an extremely violent gangster. There's no doubt about that, and he did control the streets of Chicago, and that's one thing that's not a myth, And what he did, Bill, is where he made his money, because we talk about how does a gangster get respect. There's 2 ways, either being a ferocious killer or a tremendous earner.
Mm-hmm.
And guys that are both get a lot of respect. Well, Giancana was both. And his biggest claim to fame was he took over the policy rackets, Bill, that started in the black neighborhoods, okay? And that was just like an illegal lottery, okay? Like a street lottery. And they had the same thing in New York, but Fat Tony Salerno in New York, he was more diplomatic, where he would go into Harlem and he would deal with the black gangsters. They would make a deal and everything, and he would get a certain percentage. But Giancana took control by force. So what he does, Bill, is he goes in and there was the gambling boss that ran the neighborhood, Theodore Rowe. Giancana has him whacked, and then he goes in and he basically takes control of his policy rackets. and True Violence, he started making a lot of money and a ton of money. So that's where he started to get respect. And then the other way is True Extreme Violence. And one of the most violent hits I ever heard about, Bill, in the outfit was there was a juice collector. And you know what I mean by juice collector, right?
Just making collections on Loan Shark.
Yeah. Well, his name was Action Jackson. Okay. And Giancana was convinced that he was skimming from the top. And he was also an informant for the FBI. And neither one of those things were true. The thing is, the FBI did make overtures to Action Jackson, but he didn't accept them, and he did not rat. But it didn't matter because Giancana, in his mind, said that he's a rat. So he had his people snatch him up. Now, Action Jackson, Bill, he's like a cheeseburger away from 500 pounds. This guy was huge. Yeah, he was huge.
Yeah.
So they take him to a warehouse, Bill, and they put him on a meat hook. Okay, and they hang him there, and he was hanging there for almost like 20 hours, Bill, and they were hitting him where you don't want it, where no guy wants to get hit with an electric cattle prod. Yeah, they were torturing this guy for like hours, Bill. And finally, his heart gave out and he died. But I mean, it was just a brutal, but that's where Giancana, on the street now, he becomes, one of the most, vicious gangsters in the city. And then, he went on to be at the meeting in Appalachian, and he became a powerful street boss. But the important thing is, Bill, he was never the boss of the outfit in Chicago. He was the street boss, or what they call the front boss. Tony Accardo ran Chicago for 60 years. And that's the important thing we got to understand. And we're going to talk now. Before we go on, Bill, any questions?
Well, just to clarify, you said the meeting in Appalachian, that's where all the mob bosses got together. What, I forget what it was, like the mid to late 50s, right? It was 1950.
Yeah, and it was the meeting upstate New York, Bill, where all the bosses from all over the country, from California to down south to up in New England, they all came together and they had this meeting. And Giancana represented Accardo because, again, Accardo was smart enough to stay out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Accardo didn't attend the meeting, because, again, he learned from Al Capone, and he learned that staying in the shadows is the way to run a criminal syndicate,
And that meeting, it was basically to set rules, right? Because the mafia families were kind of making up their own rules as they went.
Well, yeah, that's true. But there was a lot of problems at the time, Bill. It was also to settle some disputes that were going on. There was territorial disputes. There was all different kind of reasons. We can do a whole show on Appalachian, Bill.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we should. It'll take forever, but we can't. We go into this now, buddy. We'll never get through what we have to.
Gotcha.
But we'll come back to that. But the next thing I want to go on to is the book Double Cross. Okay. This book, Bill, this is where a lot of the misinformation about Giancana and Marylin Monroe and the Kennedys comes into play. And this book drives me crazy, Bill. It was written by Chuck Giancana, which is Sam Giancana's half brother, and Sam Giancana Jr., which is his half nephew. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they wrote this book supposedly from everything that Giancana told them. And, it's dubbed as, on the back, I think it says, the gangster that ran America. Well, I mean, Sam Giancana didn't even run Chicago. I mean, Tony Accardo ran Chicago. So how the hell could he run America if he's not even the boss of the outfit? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but anyway, Bill, the myths that are in this book, like even the dates, some of the dates that they have are wrong. They're like a lot of the mob stuff too is wrong. Like they have where Al Capone takes over. We know what happened. Al Capone and Johnny Torrio was the boss, okay? And they got into it with the North Side gang, which is mostly the Irish gang. And what happened is they took out Dean O'Banion. They killed him in his flower shop. And that's where Bugs Moran takes over the North Side, and he takes the war to those guys. And him and his people end up attacking Johnny Torrio, and they shoot him in the streets. And Torrio lives, he survives that attack, but he's crippled for life, Bill. He's in a wheelchair, and he was never the same. And he basically said after that, I'm going back to New York where he was born, and I'm giving it all to you, Al. And that's where Al Capone took over. When this book Double Cross, they say that the whole thing was orchestrated by Capone, that he was actually behind the hit on Johnny Torrio. And that's like totally ridiculous, Bill. Like there's not a shred of evidence to back that up. Like it's a known fact that Bugs Moran was behind the Johnny Torrio attempted hit. So that's just one lie that comes out in this ridiculous book.
Yeah.
But then, Bill, it goes on to this Giancana had this long time friendship with Old Man Kennedy. Okay. And this is where the garbage with Old Man Kennedy. We talked about this, Bill. He was a bank president at 25. I mean, he was already a wealthy guy during Prohibition. He actually ended up making more money after Prohibition than he ever did during Prohibition,
Yeah.
But to think that Giancana, who at the time of Prohibition, Bill, was a driver for Al Capone. I mean, Joe Kennedy had his own driver, had his own chauffeur. He was already a wealthy multimillionaire, and he's going to strike up this big relationship with a driver for Al Capone. I mean, it's just absolutely, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Bill. So it's almost accepted as fact that Old Man Kennedy had strong ties to the mafia. Okay. And there's a book that was out that called Last Call, and it was written by a guy by the name of Daniel O'Krent. Okay. And Bill, he searched through all the FBI files on Old Man Kennedy, and he went through everything he could find, not just FBI files, but intelligence files, everything he could find. And he was going back to the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and he was looking for everything on Kennedy and the mob. And Bill, he found nothing. He didn't find any reports, nothing at all. And the thing is, Old Man Kennedy was investigated 6 times for higher office positions, including ambassador to England under FDR. And Bill, you've seen how these positions
are
vetted. I mean, they're checking they're going through your life with a microscope.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. But the thing that's important, Bill, is when the book Double Cross, when they talk about Kennedy had this, relationship with Giancana, I mean, and he was involved in bootlegging. And Giancana, in the book, they go on to say that, Old Man Kennedy was like mediating disputes between Bugs Moran and Al Capone. I mean, that's just utter nonsense. I mean, I guarantee that Old Man Kennedy never sat in a room with Bugs Moran. I could guarantee that, Bill. I mean, Bugs Moran was a psychopath. Old Man Kennedy, okay, he's making hundreds of millions of dollars through real estate, through stock trading. And one of the things, Bill, is he was making money off of insider trading too, which at the time it was not illegal, if you can believe that. And he was making money. Yeah, it wasn't illegal. And he was making money. And he was also making money through distribution of movies, Bill. And he was managing film companies. And he already had a Rolls Royce. He already had his own chauffeur. He had multiple houses. He had a house in Beverly Hills. I mean, and you're telling me that he just strikes up this relationship and this friendship, with Giancana and the mob. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous.
Well, what sense would that make? I mean, why would he risk
no sense, Bill? Why would he? Why would he? He's already wealthy.
Right.
He's already a millionaire. And you know what? And then the other thing that happened is, Frank Costello, the mob boss from the Genovese family, he would later say that he would come out and say that he had a friendship with Old Man Kennedy too. And the thing is, Costello did have a lot of friends in politics, friends in business, but there's no evidence that him and Kennedy were friends. And the thing is, Bill, I think there was a lot of high bosses like Costello and stuff that actually admired the Kennedys a lot. It's almost like, remember that episode of Sopranos with Uncle Junior? And he was so admired with JFK that he had a doctor that was actually a terrible doctor.
Right.
Wouldn't return his phone calls, but his name was John Kennedy. And, and Tony makes that line, like, you make life and death decisions based on a guy's name.
Right.
But I think there was a lot of that where, they wanted, it was glorious to them to be associated with the Kennedys, but there's no evidence, that Old Man Kennedy, had any ties to Frank Costello. Show me some documents. If somebody, again, Bill, if I'm wrong, that's fine. Show me a document, show me something, show me a source that's not taking somebody at his word, that's a known liar or something. I want a source document. Don't give me some guy in the bar stool at 2 a.m. that said, "Oh man, Kennedy was involved with the mob." I mean, show me some evidence. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I agree with you, Sean, but the other thing I would say is, that area of Boston pretty well, right?
Yes.
I mean, and when people talk, it becomes
legend.
It becomes legend, but it also becomes fact.
It becomes
even
fact.
If it isn't. Even
it's
if
a lot
it
of things about Whitey Bulger up there, Bill. It's
exactly.
like you have to dig through, like, what is legend?
Right.
What is the truth, and what is facts? And it's like, you're right though. It becomes a legend, and it eventually becomes facts.
Yeah.
Yep. But I mean, anything you want to add though, Bill, before we go on? Because I mean, I think that's an important thing. Like, if there's evidence, like if somebody has evidence, and some of the things, like, people say, well, there's a lot of gangsters now, real life gangsters that have podcasts and stuff. We know who they are. We don't have to say their name, but
right.
They'll say stuff that, we know that the Kennedys had ties to the mob and stuff like that. But you got to remember, Bill, these guys, don't bring me something from somebody that wasn't even a made guy at that time, or wasn't even like a made guy during the 1960 election, which we're going to talk about,
right?
Or the assassination 63. Like, if they weren't made to the 70s, any knowledge, anything that they heard about that is just going to be like hearsay. Like, that's not evidence to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing I want to get into, Bill, is the 1960 election, because that's where this awful book, Double Cross, this is where they go next, that the mob rigged the election to help the Kennedys. Now, Bill, we talked about this before. This is such utter nonsense. Like, think about this. The Kennedys before this, John and Bobby Kennedy, were attacking the mob. We talked about the Senate Labor Rackets Committee, Bill, where they were investigating the Mafia, and they went after them. Bobby Kennedy was like a pit bull, Bill. He was going on these guys. Like, there's interviews with him and Hoffa, and he says, he looked Hoffa right in the face. He said, somebody said something about, you're going to break somebody's back. Who are you talking about? Were you talking about me? And Bobby calls Jimmy Hoffa right out. And anybody knows Jimmy Hoffa knows he doesn't like to be called out, and he called him out. You could see that it was on YouTube,
Yeah.
And the other one was, he called Giancana. Giancana was called before the committee, and he kept taking the fifth. And then he start giggling or something. And RFK says to him, he says, I thought only little girls giggled, Mr. Giancana. And Giancana, like, you could just see his face. Yeah. So Bobby went after them. Like, he went after them. And like, the other guy they always bring in is Carlos Marcello from New Orleans. I mean, Bobby went after him. They actually deported him back to Guatemala. There's a story where they dropped him right in the middle of the jungles over there, and he's running around the jungles with no shoes. And you're telling me that these guys, these smart mob bosses, are going to help the guys that's been attacking them for years now? They're going to help them get elected because they have this long friendship with old man Kennedy. I mean, it's utter nonsense, Bill. It's just like,
well, how would it benefit them in any way?
That's the thing, Bill. If you believe that, you're basically saying that you think these mob bosses are stupid. And I know the opposite. These guys are cagey. They're masters of avoiding self-incrimination.
And what do we always say about them, Sean? What's their number one priority?
Making money.
Exactly. So
making money.
Why would they muscle or try to get this guy elected, who they know is going to end up costing them money?
It makes no sense, Bill. To make it, we don't like to talk politics on the show, but to make it like in current times, to make people understand, the mob helping the Kennedys get elected is equivalent of if Trump is elected president again in 2024, and he turns around and says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make Nancy Pelosi my attorney general.
Right.
I mean, she'll be okay, right? She won't use the Justice Department to come after me. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, it's mind-boggling, Bill. Like, you're really telling me you thought these mob guys were not going to think that, JFK might put his brother in there as attorney general? Like, come on, Bill. They're always thinking 3 steps ahead.
Right.
But here's some of the facts, Bill. There's a guy by the name of John Bender. or Binder, I think that's how you pronounce it, Binder. He did a study, Bill, on the 1960 election. And this guy, Bill, he did so much research on this. Okay. And the one thing he wanted to disprove is that a lot of people, you heard the rumor, Bill, that Chicago, there were so many people voting in Chicago. There were more people voting than were in Chicago. Yeah, there was dead guys voting and all this other stuff. Well, he found out that the election results, Bill, the tallies were below average. So there wasn't more people voting than were alive. That's nonsense. They were below average. And this guy went and he interviewed ward bosses, Bill. Okay. And he interviewed people that were working the polls at the time and stuff. And he went to wards that were supposedly controlled by the mob. And what he discovered is the actual instructions to the ward bosses from the mob was to oppose JFK and support Richard Nixon. Okay. And we know this, Bill. We know this, okay, because there was people that were connected to Carlos Marcello in New Orleans and Jimmy Hoffa, who went to jail for illegal campaign contributions to Richard Nixon in the 1960 election. So the mob was supporting Richard Nixon, Bill. And this is why all that stuff on Old Man Kennedy, none of this stuff came out until the 1960 election. And you could trace it back to the hatchet men like that Nixon had around him. And they would put this information out to say that, Old Man Kennedy was dealing with the mob. But a lot of this traces back to Richard Nixon, Bill. And here's the other important thing to remember. They always say that without this Illinois, winning Illinois and winning Chicago, Kennedy would have never been president. Well, does anybody ever do the math anymore? Does anybody ever do research and figure out the numbers? Because even if Kennedy had lost Illinois, Bill, okay, he still would have been president because of the Electoral College. He still would have won enough. Like, don't people understand that? Yes, the popular vote was very close, but Kennedy won enough in the Electoral College to win that election. So that whole thing about, we gave him Chicago, so we gave him the presidency, that's nonsense. That's not true. And the other thing they say about West Virginia, too, that they helped in the West Virginia primary. I don't know, Bill, have you ever seen any pictures of West Virginia? It's not exactly a Cosa Nostra stronghold, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's not Tulsa, Oklahoma, right?
well, that was nice, Bill. I like how you threw that in there. Tulsa King. Nice shout out to Tulsa King, because that's a great show, buddy.
Oh, great show.
But I mean, so that's another thing that just this whole thing with the election. I mean, the mob was supporting Richard Nixon in 1960. So if somebody has some evidence, come out with it. But this whole thing that it's accepted as fact now, Bill. People just throw it out there and you hear it on the major networks. That's what drives me crazy. Like the mainstream media always says that, there's no conspiracy against JFK and the assassination and all this other stuff. And there's no conspiracies exist, but they always entertain conspiracies that make the Kennedys look bad. Did you ever notice that? They'll always entertain nonsense about the Kennedys and Marilyn Monroe and Area 51 and aliens and they do quote that stupid book Double Cross. I've heard it quoted on ABC, CNN, Fox, NBC, all of them, Bill. So why do you quote, why do you take that kind of ridiculous conspiracies and you give any credence to that nonsense? You know what I mean? It just drives me crazy. So anything before we move on, buddy?
No, I'm interested to get into the whole, CIA thing and the.
We will. Yeah. But before we get into that, Bill, we have to get to Marilyn Monroe next. Okay. And
okay.
We're gonna get into the CIA, the Castro plots.
I think a lot of people were getting into Marilyn Monroe.
Well, you know what, Bill? Yeah. See, this is the problem, Bill. Is Marilyn Monroe, this image that people have of Marilyn Monroe, like this. Let's just say it, this bimbo that slept her way to the top, and none of that is true, Bill. All the nonsense that's come out about Marilyn Monroe, I mean, she was actually a very smart, intelligent person. She was a really shrewd,
no one denies that. Absolutely.
Well, she was a shrewd businesswoman. I mean, but the thing is, Bill, the way she's portrayed, Bill, the thing is, there's a guy by the name of Don McGovern, okay? And this guy did so much research on Marilyn Monroe, and he wrote a book, Bill. It's like 600, 700 pages. I mean, it's an incredible book on Marilyn Monroe, and he has a whole website on her. And this guy went through all all these jackals that are around Marilyn Monroe that said they knew her and all this. And half these people didn't even know her, Bill. And they come out and they say that they were best friends with her. And he goes through the dates, and he just takes all these stories apart. Like all these nonsense stories about Marilyn Monroe. Like, you know, I won't even bring up that idiot Gianni Russo, because, you know, he's got so many stories. He's had an affair, he says, with Marilyn Monroe, but nobody checks the dates. He would have been 14 when he said this. I mean, are you kidding me?
And he's, just for people that don't know, he's the guy, he played Carlo in The Godfather. He's just
Bill, why would anybody take him serious?
No.
I mean, he says he was kidnapped by Pablo Escobar, and then he negotiated his way out of it. I mean, Bill, anybody kidnapped by Pablo Escobar is not around to tell anybody about it.
No, for sure.
But I mean, Donald McGovern, Bill, if anybody wants to really read about who Marilyn Monroe was, what she was all about, she had a very, very tight, close circle of friends. And she wasn't, you know, she wasn't this publicity hog that everybody made her out to. Sure, she made money on her beauty, Bill. Everybody knows that. I mean, she was gorgeous. You know, and the thing is, though, she had a very circle of friends, and she was a very private person, you know. So, you know, let's get to the elephant in the room, Bill, because everybody wants to know about Marilyn Monroe and JFK. So McGovern actually went into this whole thing about Marilyn Monroe and JFK, and the rumor, you know, they make this long affair, the two of them had, and then they end up saying that, you know, there's conspiracy theories that Marilyn killed herself over the Kennedys, and she had an affair with RFK too, and all this stuff. Well, McGovern went into it, and he did so much detail on the actual situation. And the thing is, Bill, what it looks like now is it was actually a one-night stand between JFK and Marilyn Monroe, and it was in March 4th, 1962, and it happened at Bing Crosby's house. Okay, and what McGovern did is he researched. He found a masseuse by the name of Ralph Roberts, who was very close to, it was a confidant of Marilyn Monroe, because her closest circle was mostly male friends, because she didn't have a lot of female friends, you know, because, you know, to most females, she was a threat, right, just because of her beauty.
Sure.
But anyway, Ralph Roberts, you know, what he did, Bill, is he talked about the night in question where Marilyn calls him from Bing Crosby's house. And she's asking Roberts a lot of questions about back injuries and back problems and all this. And he heard voices in the back and stuff. And then later on, a couple of days later, he would ask her, he said, you know, when you called me the other day, he said, was that the president in the background? Was that JFK? And you know, she said, she told him, she said, yeah, we had a one-night stand, and, we know Kennedy had back problems, and she was asking questions and stuff, and she ended up telling him the whole thing is, you know, they didn't want to move forward with any type of relationship. It was a one-night stand, but they became friends afterwards. Okay, and the whole thing of this long affair was just totally blown out of proportion, Bill. And what McGovern does is the dates where supposedly people say that Marilyn was with JFK and all this other stuff, he goes through these one by one, Bill. And he proves that when they said JFK and Marilyn were together, Marilyn was on the West Coast, JFK was in DC, or JFK was in Boston. You know, like he disproves, and he goes through this like very methodically through all these rumors, Bill. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the other thing is the famous, you know, where she's saying happy birthday, Mr. President. And, right, you know, they make it out that, you know, it was just those two in the room. There was 15,000 people there, Bill. And, you know what I mean?
And Jackie was sitting right there.
No, Jackie wasn't there, Bill.
Oh, she wasn't?
No, she wasn't. But here's the thing, and they make a big deal about that. They say, well, Jackie wasn't there because she knew Marilyn was going to do this. Jackie had a plan. She had a different engagement somewhere else, and she had that plan before Marilyn was announced that she was going to be there. Okay. But there was other family members there, Bill. And here's the other thing to remember is Hoover hated the Kennedys, Bill. J. Edgar Hoover at the FBI hated the Kennedys. And he wanted to find any piece of dirt that he could have on the Kennedys. And he looked into this, and all he came up was like with rumors and stuff like that. Like he never had anything that, you know, to substantiate a long-term affair. Okay. It was a one-night stand. And then it was a friendship. And then the other thing is they make it that after JFK breaks up with Marilyn, she begins an affair with RFK. Now, Bill, this is just total nonsense. There's no speck of evidence that RFK and Marilyn Monroe had an affair. Okay, now they according to a lot of people, including this awful book Double Cross, they say that it started at this dinner party in 1962 at Peter Lawford's house. And you know what Peter Lawford was, right? The brother-in-law, he was part of the Rat Pack.
Okay, yeah,
with
that's
Sammy
right.
Davis and Sinatra and all.
Right.
Well, they make it out that Bobby and Marilyn were basically alone at this party at the end of the night and this and that. And the truth is, they were never alone at this party. Bobby's wife Ethel was at the party the whole time. And they make it like, you know, that Bobby was dancing with Marilyn and all this other stuff. Well, everybody was dancing with each other. It was like harmless fun, Bill. Ethel was dancing with, I think, like Tony Curtis or somebody else, a movie actor was there. And you know, at one point they called Old Man Kennedy, because Old Man Kennedy at this point had a stroke, and they called him up and they put Marilyn on the phone with him. And she was talking to him, and it was like harmless fun, Bill. Like the family actually, a lot of the family, even Ethel, they all like Marilyn Monroe. You know, the kids all, you know, she's a big movie star, huge movie star.
Yeah.
And it was just like a bunch of harmless fun. And they just come up with this nonsense that, you know, RFK and Marilyn Monroe had an affair. That is utter. There's not one speck of evidence to back that up, Bill. Nothing. So I don't know. Yeah. And the whole thing, Bill, is the next thing is like the death of Marilyn Monroe. Okay. So Giancana in you know, this awful book, Double Cross, they say that, you know, the mob killed Marilyn Monroe. Right. And then there's another story that the Kennedys killed Marilyn Monroe. So let's just dispel those rumors, Bill. Thomas Noguchi, who was did the autopsy, he also would do the autopsy in RFK, a tremendous forensic pathologist. He said, you know, he's a detailed autopsy, said that there was no evidence of foul play. It was either an accidental overdose or a suicide, because we know Marilyn was depressed. She had problems from her childhood, you know, and so whether it was a suicide or whether it was an accidental overdose, I don't know, but it definitely was a murder, Bill.
Right.
And the thing is, here's the nonsense where these rumors come in, okay? So they say, first of all, let's talk about the Giancana. So the mob supposedly kills Marilyn, right? Well, the device they used, according to this book, Double Cross, wasn't even invented in 1965 or 1962 when Marilyn was killed. Okay, and they said, you know, that these mob guys go in, they poison Marilyn, they kill her, and then they leave her there naked on the bed, and then they leave a bunch of clues there to tie her to the Kennedys. But then RFK and Peter Lawford come over and they get rid of all the evidence, you know. But here's the thing they leave out of the story. The housekeeper, Eunice Murray, slept on the couch the whole night. So they just completely leave her out of the story. So this lady is like the soundest sleeper in the history of individuals, Bill. Right. I mean, she's just these mob guys are trampling through the room, you know what I mean? And she's just sleeping on the couch, and you know, and it's, and the other rumor is that RFK and this doctor, you know, came in and they poisoned Marilyn. Okay, so here's the problem with that, Bill. Here's the problem with that nonsense. McGovern does a lot of good work on this, and I don't know if I know Lisa Peace did a lot of work on all this, and Jim D'Eugenio, and one of them, I don't know who it was, but it's in McGovern's book that they discovered that there was pictures, okay, of Bobby Kennedy and videos, recordings of Bobby Kennedy, and they were timestamped, and he was in Gilroy, California. Okay, now Gilroy's in Northern California, Bill. Marilyn lives in, I think she either Malibu or Los Angeles, but it's Southern California. Now, I don't know if these people need a geography lesson, but, you know, going from Northern California to Southern California, Bill, is not like driving from Archibald to Dixon City.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, well, it's, you know, but here's the thing. Marilyn, according to the autopsy, was killed between 11 p.m. and midnight. Okay. Now, Bobby Kennedy, pictures of him were time-stamped at 10:30 in Gilroy, California, which is about 3.5 to 4 hours by helicopter from Southern California. Okay, so what we're supposed to believe is that, Bobby gets all the kids, he gets out to the bed, 10:30, he drives 15 minutes to the helipad, gets on a helicopter, and him and his doctor are in Los Angeles between 11 and 12. I mean, that's the fastest helicopter bill I've ever heard of in my entire life.
Right.
They kill Marylin, and again, the housekeeper sleeping on the couch, and here comes Bobby with his doctor, and they're trampling through, and they don't make any noise. She's such a sound sleeper. And then they supposedly kill Marylin, and then they take the helicopter back, and they're back in Northern California by 7 a.m. Like the whole thing, Bill, it doesn't add up. The timeline doesn't add up. The whole thing is ridiculous. And again, once you disprove that Bobby Kennedy had a friendship with Marylin Monroe, he didn't have any affair with Marylin Monroe.
Right.
Okay. So that's all complete nonsense. So I think that the whole thing with Marylin Monroe upsets me because she's given this reputation that just isn't true, Bill. And it's just, then they put her in all these conspiracy theories with Area 51 and aliens and JFK and just all this garbage and then McGovern goes through the book and he details like people like Gene Carman that supposedly was the best friend of Marylin, didn't even know her. Can't even, you know what I mean? She wasn't in her inner circle.
Right.
And they just make up these jackals come out of nowhere because let's face it, Bill, Marylin Monroe sells, the Kennedys sell. The mob sells. So you put all those in, you're going to make money. You're going to make money off it. And that's what these jackals do. Like there was just that Netflix documentary on the hidden Kennedy tapes. And this guy, Anthony Summers, who I'm familiar with, I don't trust anything coming from Summers, to be honest with you. But the important thing is, Bill, these tapes, I mean, if he's got these tapes, he uses actors in the tapes. He doesn't even use the real tapes. So how can I take anything serious? How do I know? And there's nothing in there of any consequence. And then he'll have people having sex. And how do I know that's not him and his wife? I don't know who that. He's trying to say that that's the Kennedys and Marylin Monroe. It's like, come on, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stop with the nonsense. So that's enough. That's enough out of that, Bill. Any questions before we move on, buddy?
No, let's keep going.
Well, let's go to the Castro assassination plots. Okay. Now, here's the important thing, Bill. The book Double Cross, and there's an actress by the name of Judah Campbell, who she was another one that came out and said that she had an affair with Kennedy, and she was taking messages between Kennedy and Giancana and all this other stuff about Castro. And, none of that is true, Bill. She doesn't even have the dates right. She's talking about 1959. She doesn't have the dates right. The mob plots. Oh, Bill, before I go on, one last myth I want to dispel. In the book, they kind of had this affair with Marylin Monroe. That's nonsense too. McGovern goes through that. There's no evidence whatsoever that Marylin Monroe, other than a show that maybe she did in Vegas and Giancana was there. There's no evidence whatsoever that he ever had an affair with Marylin Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the Castro assassination plot. So what really happened was they didn't even originate under Kennedy. They originated in 1960 when the CIA reaches out to their main guy, Robert Mayhew. And we talked about Mayhew a lot. And Lisa Pease did a tremendous amount of research on Mayhew. And his name will come up in the RFK assassination. But he was the guy, he was Alan Dulles' go-to guy on operations that they wanted to keep under the radar. There's even a rumor, Bill, that the original series Mission Impossible was based on Robert Mayhew. The government wants to deny all involvement. This is the guy they go to.
Yeah.
So he sits down with Johnny Roselli, who was he was a capo in the outfit in Chicago, but he was based in between Hollywood and Las Vegas. He would go back and forth, but he was Chicago's man. Because remember, the outfit ends up taking over the casinos in Vegas, Bill, after New York, after the whole Bugsy Siegel fiasco. And the outfit would actually end up running the casinos, and you know that from the movie Casino.
Right.
But at this meeting was Robert Mayhew, Johnny Roselli, Santo Trafficante, the mob boss of Florida, and Sam Giancana. Now, Giancana had to get approval from Tony Accardo to be at this meeting. There's no doubt about it. There's he could not do this on his own. He's only the front boss. Okay. And the whole idea was, let's, you guys have as much interest in taking out Castro as we do, meaning, the CIA. And, I talked to Lisa Pease about this, and I said to her, I never understood why Allen Dulles and the CIA would go to the Mafia to take out Fidel Castro. You know what I mean? Like, it never made sense to me tactically, because it's like they have their access to their own trained killers that are snipers and more like mob hits. You know how they go down, Bill. It's one best friend killing another, and he shoots him in the back of the head. I mean, what did the CIA want to do? Invite Castro to dinner and shoot him in the back of the head? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're going to take out Osama bin Laden, Bill, do you send in SEAL Team 6, or do you make a call over to Bada Bing Club to get a couple mob guys? I mean,
yeah, right.
But I said that my theory on this was that CIA went to the Mafia because they wanted to put Castro. They didn't care whether it succeeded or not. They wanted to push Castro into a corner where he had nowhere to turn but the Soviet Union. And by doing this, they would be able to extend the Cold War. Okay. Because having an enemy 90 miles off the shore that's tied to the Soviet Union, that really, gives them reason to extend the Cold War. But Lisa thought that, maybe that's possible, but it was more that the CIA always looking as a contingency to blame somebody if something goes wrong. So, and you talked about this, Bill. Me and you had a private conversation, to see it. Why did the CIA never get Castro? Because if you look at their hit rate, with Allen Dulles, I mean, he either assassinated or removed leaders all over the world, from Arbenz in Guatemala to Mossadegh in Iran, Lumumba in the Congo, even Kennedy in America. I mean, he had like a 99, 98% hit rate. The only time he failed was Fidel Castro and Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. Those were the two that they never got. Yeah. And I don't know why they never, that we could go on about that. That's a whole other show, I think, buddy. But anyway, I sit down and they have this meeting, and they came up with all these ideas. They were going to poison his wetsuit when he went on scuba diving and all this other nonsense. And the thing is, this is where the book Double Cross and a lot of these rumors come in, that the Kennedys approved this plan. Now, that's utter nonsense, Bill. Why would the Kennedys who are attacking the Mafia, RFK is attacking these same guys, and why would they be involved in this plan? And remember, it didn't even start when Kennedy was president. But here's the facts, Bill, because there was a CIA internal investigation. Their own inspector general at the CIA said that there was no White House approval on these plans. They didn't know anything about it. And the only reason RFK found out about it is because what happened was Sam Giancana was having an affair with one of the McGuire sisters. I think it was Phyllis McGuire, one of the singing group, right?
Yes, Phyllis McGuire. Yep.
That affair was true, unlike his made up one with Marylin Monroe. And he thought that she was cheating on him with another actor. I forget who. It
was a comedian, Dan Rowan.
Who was it, Bill?
Dan Rowan was the guy's name.
Okay. Yeah, and she was having an affair.
He was Laughing. That was the show that he was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what they did, Bill, is anyway, they had Mayhew. Giancana asked Mayhew to have his guys bug, McGuire's room and her house and stuff, and find out if it was true. What happened, Bill, is they got caught, and then the Justice Department was asked by the CIA to let them guys go. So Bobby finds out about this, and he's like, what happened here? Why did these guys get let go? What happened? And then he was told, well, CIA asked for a favor. And he's like, well, why would the CIA care? And he says, well, this is what happened. Giancana was doing this work, and Bobby hit the roof, Bill. He's going after Sam Giancana. and he finds out that the CIA, was in bed with the mafia to kill Fidel Castro, and he tells them right there and John finds out, of course, and he says, "Stop this nonsense right now." And they told him that those plots were old, they're not ongoing, and that was a lie. They continued, and the CIA was trying to assassinate Castro. Richard Helms was running that operation right up to the time that JFK was assassinated. So that whole thing was a lie. They lied about that. So, so that nonsense that the Kennedys, knew about this, they found out about it because of this incident, and they told them to stop it. This has to stop. We're trying to prosecute these guys. We're not going to be putting them on a payroll. Well, what happened then is the church committee investigates these plots. So let's get back to Giancana. So Giancana was running the streets of Chicago, and what happened is he started to become too public. And remember, Ricardo hates that nonsense about stay in the shadows, do not get public. And what happens is he basically he doesn't kill Giancana, but he basically kicks him out of the outfit, Bill, and he lets him retire basically to Mexico. And Giancana lives in Mexico, and who knows what he was doing over there, but he wasn't involved with the outfit at this point. He's done. Ricardo banned him. And what happens is,
well, wait, didn't he went to prison, right?
Who did?
Giancana.
I think he had a short stay in prison, Bill, but not a long stay. He was banned to Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, he might have been. He served some time in prison. Yeah, overcharged and stuff. But that's not why. What happened was Ricardo had enough of him, and he kicks him out, and he's basically living, a normal life. I mean, there's rumors he was involved in drugs. I don't know, Bill. He might have been. These guys never retire. Like
right.
The Sopranos said, "What is this? The Navy?"
Right. We're not hockey players.
Yeah. But anyway, what happens is Giancana is subpoenaed with the church committee, and the church committee is investigating the CIA and all their operations and what's going on, and they want to know what Giancana knew about these plots to assassinate Fidel Castro. So Giancana comes back to Chicago, okay, and when he comes back, the FBI has him under surveillance. As soon as he comes back in America, he's under surveillance, and they want to know what's going on with him. Is he trying to get back in the game? What's he doing? And what happens is the surveillance is taken off. And I try to find out. I've heard it was like an hour before. I heard it was a couple of days before, but it was taken off. And then right after that, Giancana's whacked. He gets killed. And he's killed in his basement. He's cooking sausages on his stove. And it was obviously somebody he knew, Bill, and somebody he trusted. And he turned his back and he's cooking on the stove, and they shoot him in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And then they shoot him a few times around the mouth as, send a message, I guess.
Right.
Which the mob really doesn't do stuff like that. They usually, you get the message after the back of the head shot. So the suspects, it never really was clear. A lot of people think, maybe the CIA did it. Maybe Tony Ricardo. If any of the mobsters, if Trafficante had to do it, if any of those guys had to do ordered it, it would have had to go through Ricardo. But, a lot of people think that it might have been William Harvey, the CIA, because he was supposedly in that area at the time, and he would have been somebody that they thought maybe Giancana would have trusted. But Harvey had a relationship with Johnny Roselli. He didn't have a relationship with Giancana. So, to be honest, Bill, who killed Giancana? I don't know. I don't know if it was a CIA hit. I don't know if it was a mob hit, but he ends up getting whacked. And I went through a lot of these mob files on that the CIA has on the mob. And the one thing is Giancana's involvement, it wasn't as much as some of the other guys. Roselli was really, really involved. He was the most involved in the plots to kill Castro. I mean, a lot of guys that were in the CIA didn't even think he was a mafioso. They thought he was a regular CIA agent because of the way he acted. They called him the colonel or something like that.
Oh,
yeah, they didn't even know, because that's how close he was to William Harvey.
Yeah.
And of course, Roselli ends up, he gets called to testify and he disappears. And then they find him in a oil drum, off the coast of Miami there. And they found paralyzing drugs in his system, Bill. And somebody cut his legs off with a chainsaw while he was still alive, while they were interrogating him. I mean, that's a special kind of ruthless.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that's the thing. Like, and the other key thing about this mob plot is a lot of these rumors, they like to put Carlos Marcello into that. And I've never seen anything on Marcello being involved in these mob plots. It was Giancana, it was Roselli, and it was Trafficante, but it was mostly Roselli. There was nothing on Marcello. Marcello had some involvement with Army intelligence, but that was later on in the late 60s. But I didn't see anything on that. So, the mystery of Giancana, who knows who really killed him? But again, as a lesson learned, stay out of the spotlight. Billy?
Yeah. I definitely try to stay out of the spotlight. I don't want to.
Well, you're not a gangster, Billy. You can stay in the spotlight if you want, buddy. But for Sam Giancana, it's not a good idea, buddy.
No, definitely.
But the important thing to remember is that Accardo was the one that ran Chicago.
Yeah.
And if you're asking me who's the smartest gangster of all time, I think it's Tony Accardo, Bill.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, what's the expression? If you're a famous mobster, you're doing it wrong, right? Well,
sure. John Gotti had a short reign. Al Capone had a short reign.
Yep.
I mean, stay out of the shadows. Giancana, he had a short reign too, Bill.
Yeah.
So I hope we got through some of these myths, Bill. I hope we told some truth tonight, buddy.
Well, I think so. As usual.
Well, yeah, but you know what? It's hard to, when you're talking about 50, 60 years of people that, they everybody, and I'll be honest with you, Bill, there was a time like I believed a lot of this stuff. Like if you asked me this, even in the 90s or maybe even like 10 years ago, I would have said, yeah, a lot of this, yeah, it's true. But when you actually look at it, you look through the documentation, you find out, no, it isn't true. Reputations are ruined, and just, like I said, Bill, it's like, it's like character assassination,
right.
And it's like somebody told me, well, you're like a Kennedy homer, and I'm a Kennedy homer. I admit that, but I'm like their pit bull, Bill. I always defend them when I think they need it, but that doesn't mean what I'm telling you is not true. I mean, I'm going to tell you that the truth from the documentation, and I'm going to stick up for, when I think they, deserve to be criticized, I'm going to criticize them. So
definitely. Yeah,
that's the way we roll, Billy.
That's what we do. I always say that we bring the truth. We bring the truth
out, buddy,
on this show.
Like Fox Mulder said, buddy, the truth is out there.
Truth is out there. Trust no one.
No, trust nobody, buddy, especially when you're dealing with gangsters and paparazzi,
Oh, yeah.
So,
all right.
Billy.
That was good. Again, once again, great research, great show, great topic. I think our listeners are really going to enjoy it. I think this was a really good one.
Well, anytime you mention the Kennedys and Marilyn Monroe, Billy, it gets people excited.
Yeah.
You throw the mob in there and you got a story, buddy. But I hope we told the true story here. I hope people understand, this is what we're trying to do here, pal.
That's right. Every week.
Even if we turn just a couple people that believe us, Bill, I'll take that, buddy.
Sounds good. All right. Great episode. Great show. Come on back next week. We've got, I don't know where this episode's going to line up, Sean, but we have some great content coming up, really great topics to talk about. We're just getting started here in 2023. I think this is going to be our year, Sean. I think
so too, buddy. Keep all those questions coming, listeners.
We're going to take over the podcast world in 2023.
Here we come, Joe Rogan.
He's shaking in his boots right now, or whatever he wears. All right, Sean.
All right, Billy.
All right, make sure you follow us all over the place. YouTube is a good place to get our show. YouTube, we want you to subscribe. We don't have a whole lot of subscribers, but we got a lot of views. So I think people are hitting that subscribe button. It's easy to do. It's right there. It's right there.
And Bill, what does it cost them? What does it cost them, Billy?
It doesn't cost a dime. It's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything. You just click on subscribe. It'll help us. It'll help the show. and it'll get the word out there when people click. See, what it does is it helps when people click on the topics that we talk about. It'll bring us closer to the top, and you know, make our show a little bit more popular, and it'll be good for everybody. Good for you, good for me, right?
Expand our base, Billy.
What are we talking about here? All you got to do is click a button. That's it. All right.
That's
Sean.
enough out of you.
That's enough out of me. It's enough out of you. All right. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.